The first time Oliver saw Emma, she wasn't trying to stand out. She was tucked into a corner of the crowded agency lobby, clutching a folder like it was a shield. To Oliver, the new hotshot ad executive who thrived on bets and risks, she looked like an easy challenge. A quiet girl with soft eyes and no idea who he was. In that moment, he didn't see the storm he was about to walk into. Later that night, at a neon-lit bar with his colleagues, the air thick with laughter and ego, someone joked about the new girl in the office. Oliver's smirk turned into a dare. "I could have her falling for me in a week," he said. The table erupted in cheers, and the bet was born. It was cruel, childish, and thrilling. The kind of game Oliver had played too many times without consequence. But Emma wasn't a game. She was smart, creative, and far more perceptive than anyone realized. While Oliver rehearsed his usual charm, she was already noticing cracks in his perfect mask, the flicker of doubt behind his smile, the restless energy that hid something fragile. What started as a careless wager began to feel like a dangerous edge, and Oliver couldn't tell if he was still in control. As days turned into weeks, the lines blurred. The coffee breaks, the late-night brainstorming sessions, the stolen laughs in the elevator, none of it felt like part of a bet anymore. Oliver's chest tightened every time Emma looked at him with genuine trust. He wasn't just playing a role, he was falling. And deep down, he knew the truth would destroy her. What happens when the hunter becomes the hunted? When the man who set out to break a heart finds his own unraveling? This is the story of Oliver and Emma. A story of betrayal, redemption, and the fight to rebuild what never should have been broken. Stay with me, because nothing about this love was simple, and everything about it was real.
Before we dive deeper, let me take you to where it all began. A bustling advertising agency in the heart of New York City, where the coffee never stops flowing and ideas are pitched like battles. In that electric atmosphere, two very different lives collided. Oliver, the rising star who thought he had it all figured out, and Emma, the newcomer whose quiet strength would change everything. Oliver had built his reputation on charm, risk, and results. He closed deals like other people ordered lunch, fast, confident, and without a second thought. But beneath the slick suits and witty comebacks was a young man who mistook winning for living. Emma, on the other hand, came from a small town with a big dream. She wasn't shy, she was focused. Her designs had already impressed senior managers before she'd even finished her first week. At first glance, they couldn't have been more different. He moved through the office like a storm, commanding attention. She glided like a quiet current, noticing everything but saying little. Yet those differences were exactly what drew them together, and what made the truth about the bet so devastating when it finally came out. As you listen to this story, think about the times you may have misjudged someone or been misjudged yourself. Betrayal doesn't only happen in big, loud ways. Sometimes it begins with a laugh over drinks and a careless promise. And sometimes, if you're lucky, it ends with redemption. Before we continue, make sure you're subscribed to this channel so you don't miss stories like this one. Give this video a like if you're already feeling curious about what happens next. And I'd love to know, where are you watching from? Drop your country or city in the comments below. Now, let's step into the first chapter of Oliver and Emma's story.
The Monday morning sun spilled through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Carter & Klein Advertising, making the chrome desks glint like mirrors. Oliver strolled in 5 minutes late, coffee in one hand, phone in the other, his tie already loosened. He was the kind of man who could be late and still be forgiven, at least until today. By the elevators, he noticed her again, the new hire. Emma stood with a portfolio pressed to her chest, hair falling over one shoulder as she scanned her notes. She didn't fidget like most newcomers. She was calm, deliberate, like someone who had rehearsed this moment 100 times. At the morning meeting, Oliver's boss praised Emma's first design concept. Fresh, clean, unexpected, he said, holding up her mock-ups. Oliver leaned back in his chair, pretending not to watch the way her cheeks flushed under the compliment. Something about her composure unsettled him. That night, in a bar just blocks away, the usual crowd of agency climbers gathered. Neon signs flickered across glasses of whiskey. Conversations rose and fell like waves. Someone joked about the new girl who had impressed the boss on her first day. Oliver smirked and raised his glass. "I could have her falling for me in a week," he said. The table erupted. "Prove it," one of them laughed. The bet was set. $500 and bragging rights. He'd played games like this before. It was never personal, never messy. Women drifted in and out of his life like campaigns. Launch, run, fade. But as he walked back to his apartment that night, the echo of Emma's quiet confidence lingered. He brushed it off. A bet was a bet. The next morning he arrived early, a rare event, and offered to carry Emma's coffee from the break room. She thanked him without looking up, absorbed in her sketches. Up close, Oliver saw how detailed her work was. Tiny pencil marks shaping entire worlds. "You're really talented," he said, meaning it more than he expected. She smiled faintly, but kept working. Over the next few days, Oliver launched his charm offensive. Compliments at the copier, jokes during meetings, casual invitations for lunch. Emma accepted politely, but rarely lingered. There was a reserve about her, a wall he couldn't quite climb. The harder he tried, the more curious he became. One evening, the office emptied except for the two of them. She was finishing a storyboard. He was pretending to review a proposal. The glow from her monitor lit her face as she asked him a question about an ad concept. For a moment, he forgot the bet entirely. "You're different from the others," she said softly, not looking at him. It wasn't a compliment. It was a test. Walking home later, Oliver realized he hadn't thought about the money or the bragging rights once all day. The game was shifting, and he wasn't sure when it had started. Somewhere between coffee runs and late-night brainstorming, his lines had blurred. Emma wasn't just another project. But a bet once made is a shadow that follows you. And while Oliver's feelings were changing, his friends still expected updates. "So, is she falling yet?" they texted. He typed back a quick reply, working on it, but felt the weight of every word. By the end of that week, he would have to choose between the game and the girl. The following week at Carter & Klein was a blur of deadlines and client calls. But Oliver kept finding ways to orbit around Emma. He'd pop by her desk under the pretense of checking progress, or casually offer to grab her lunch during long meetings. Each time he noticed details, her habit of doodling tiny stars in the margins of her notes, the way she hummed softly when deep in thought. Emma, meanwhile, was starting to lower her guard. She accepted a coffee from him without hesitation now. She even laughed at one of his jokes during a tense pitch rehearsal, her eyes lighting up like he'd caught her off guard. It was the first time Oliver saw her not just as the new hire, but as a woman with a whole interior world he wanted to know. One night, they both stayed late to finish a presentation. The city outside was a blur of lights against the windows. Oliver ordered takeout for two, and they ate sitting on the edge of the conference table, papers spread around them.
Emma told him about her hometown in Vermont, her grandmother who taught her to draw, and how she'd dreamed of working in advertising since high school. He listened, really listened, and found himself telling her things he never shared with anyone at work. How he'd grown up moving from city to city, how his father's absence had left him chasing approval from anyone who would give it. Emma's eyes softened. "That must have been hard," she said quietly. For a moment the air between them felt fragile, almost sacred. After that night, Oliver started questioning everything. The texts from his friends, "Update, is she hooked yet?" felt like needles. He stopped answering right away. He caught himself scrolling through Emma's portfolio online, not for leverage, but out of admiration. The bet felt like a trap of his own making. Emma, however, wasn't blind. She noticed the way Oliver's charm sometimes flickered, like a light bulb about to burn out. She noticed the half-answers when she asked about his weekends, the tension behind his smile. Part of her wanted to believe he was different. Another part whispered caution. On Friday, he surprised her with tickets to an exclusive gallery opening, something his friends would expect him to do as part of the plan. But when he handed them over, his voice cracked slightly. "I thought you'd like this, no strings." Emma tilted her head, searching his face. "No strings?" she asked. He nodded. She took the ticket slowly, still unsure. That night at the gallery, under dim lights and soft jazz, they wandered past abstract canvases and sculptures of steel and glass. Emma pointed out her favorites, explaining why certain colors made her feel calm or restless. Oliver barely looked at the art. He was watching her. Something inside him ached to tell her the truth, to end the lie before it consumed them both. But his phone buzzed. A message from one of the guys. "She's out with you tonight, right? Bet's almost over. Time to close." Oliver shoved the phone back into his pocket, stomach twisting. For the first time in years, he felt ashamed. As they left the gallery, rain began to fall, slicking the city streets in silver. Emma pulled her coat tighter. "Thank you for tonight," she said softly. Oliver opened his mouth to speak, to confess, to explain, but the words died on his tongue. Instead, he just nodded. In the reflection of a puddle, he saw himself, a man smiling at a woman he was supposed to betray. The image haunted him all the way home.
The next Monday felt different. The office hummed with the usual chatter, but Oliver walked in carrying 2 coffees without thinking twice. Emma took hers with a small smile, no hesitation now. Their colleagues began to whisper. "Since when does Oliver play delivery boy?" someone joked. He ignored it. Over lunch, Emma surprised him by sharing a bold campaign idea. Her voice, usually quiet, came alive as she described visuals and slogans. Oliver watched her hands move as she spoke, sketching lines in the air. He wasn't thinking about the bet anymore. He was thinking about how much he wanted her in his life, beyond deadlines, beyond games. That evening, she invited him to a small jazz bar in the East Village. "My brother's band plays there," she said. "You might like it." The place was dimly lit, full of mismatched chairs and warm laughter. Oliver, who usually thrived on high-profile events, found himself at ease. Emma introduced him to her brother, who sized him up with protective eyes. During the set, Oliver caught Emma swaying to the music, her face lit with joy. He felt a pang of guilt so sharp he almost stood to leave. This wasn't a game anymore. This was a woman trusting him enough to bring him into her world. He knew he was walking a razor's edge. Later, outside the bar, Emma said, "You're not what I expected." He raised an eyebrow. "Good or bad?" She smiled faintly. "Still deciding." The honesty in her tone pierced him. He wanted to tell her everything right there on the sidewalk, but fear rooted him in place. Meanwhile, his friends were growing impatient. "You've gone soft," one texted. "We're waiting for proof." Another sent a laughing emoji. Oliver typed and deleted responses, finally shoving the phone away. For the first time in years, he didn't care what they thought, yet he still hadn't found the courage to end the bet out loud. Back at work, Emma began noticing odd things, snippets of conversation when she passed Oliver's friends in the hall, a glance exchanged that cut off too quickly. She pushed the thoughts aside, but a small, cold doubt began to grow in her chest. One night, as they walked out of the office, a voice from behind them called, "How's the bet going, Oliver?" It was one of his coworkers, drunk and careless. The words hung in the air like a gunshot. Oliver froze. Emma turned slowly, eyes narrowing. "What bet?" she asked. Oliver's mind scrambled for a way to undo what had just happened, but Emma's face was already shifting from confusion to hurt to anger. "Tell me," she demanded, voice shaking. The streetlight caught the tears forming at the corners of her eyes. He opened his mouth, but nothing came. The silence was an answer on its own. Emma stepped back, clutching her bag like a lifeline. "I can't believe you," she whispered, then turned and walked away into the rain. Oliver reached out, but she was gone before his fingers touched air.
That night, Oliver didn't sleep. Her face, as she turned away, replayed in his mind like a film on loop. The look in her eyes, not just anger, but disappointment, cut deeper than any rejection he'd ever felt. For the first time, he saw himself through someone else's eyes. Reckless, shallow, cruel. He showed up at the office the next morning, but couldn't bring himself to sit at his desk. Emma's chair was empty. She'd called in sick. His friends approached him, smirking. "So, the bet's off?" one asked. Oliver stared at them, the noise of the open office fading until all he heard was his own heartbeat. "The bet's dead," he said quietly, "and so is our friendship if you ever mention it again." He walked away before they could answer. For days, Emma avoided him. Emails only, no eye contact, no small talk. Oliver didn't push. He stopped sending charming texts. He stopped trying to explain. Instead, he started working differently, arriving early, taking on extra projects, mentoring interns, staying out of the bar scene. People whispered about the change, but he didn't care. He also began leaving small, sincere notes on her desk, not apologies disguised as jokes, but simple acknowledgments. "I'm sorry. I betrayed your trust. I'm working to become someone better." No signature, no expectation, just honesty on paper. Weeks passed. Emma kept her distance but couldn't help noticing. Oliver wasn't hovering anymore. He was just different. When she stayed late, he'd quietly leave her tea on the counter without a word. When a client criticized her work unfairly, he defended her in the meeting, risking his own standing. It wasn't a performance. It was a man rebuilding himself brick by brick. One Friday, she found a sketchbook on her desk. Inside were pages of ad concepts they'd brainstormed together with his notes. "You inspired these. You deserved better than a bet." At the end, a handwritten letter. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know the truth. Somewhere between my worst and my best, I fell in love with you." That night, Emma sat in her apartment turning the pages, tears smudging the ink. She wasn't ready to forgive him, not yet, but she felt the sincerity in every line. He wasn't asking for a second chance. He was showing he'd earned one. At work the next week, she finally spoke to him. "Why now?" she asked quietly as they passed in the hallway. He met her eyes without flinching. "Because you deserve the truth, and because I hate the man I was," his voice cracked.
I'm trying to be someone who doesn't hurt people like you." Emma didn't answer right away, but she noticed he no longer waited for her in the break room. He no longer tried to impress her. He simply did his job, better than before, and let his actions speak. Slowly, the anger inside her softened into something else. Not forgiveness yet, but the fragile beginning of trust. One rainy evening, as she left the office, Oliver appeared at the door holding an umbrella. "You forgot yours," he said. She hesitated, then stepped under it. For the first time in weeks, they walked side by side in silence. The city lights reflected on the wet pavement like 1,000 tiny promises neither of them dared to voice.
Spring came early to the city, softening the sharp edges of winter with warm breezes and pale sunlight. Weeks had passed since the night under the umbrella. Oliver had kept his quiet routine. Work hard, speak little, show respect. He wasn't waiting for Emma anymore. He was simply learning how to be better. Emma noticed. She watched from a distance as he mentored a nervous intern through her first big pitch. She saw him refuse drinks with the old crowd who still tried to draw him back into their games. More than once she caught him staying late to redo a client's project so a junior designer wouldn't be blamed. He was different. One afternoon, she walked into the break room to find him alone, reading a dog-eared book of advertising classics instead of scrolling his phone. He looked up and gave a small, almost shy smile. "Hi," he said. It was the first word they'd exchanged outside of work tasks in weeks. "Hi," she replied, standing there awkwardly. "I saw what you did for Jasmine's project. That was kind." Oliver shrugged. She deserved support. Everyone does. His voice was steady, without any trace of his old charm. It was a statement, not a performance. Emma decided to test him. "There's a community art program I volunteer with on Saturdays. They need someone to help with the branding project. No pay. Interested?" For a moment he hesitated, then nodded. "Tell me where to be." That weekend, Oliver showed up on time, sleeves rolled, ready to work. He spent the day helping teenagers design flyers and logos, quietly encouraging them. Emma watched from across the room as he bent down to show a boy how to shade a drawing. This wasn't the Oliver from the bar that first night. This was someone new. During a break, she joined him at a folding table. "Why are you doing this?" she asked softly. He wiped his hands on a rag. "Because it's right. Because it helps. Because I wanted to show you, not tell you." His eyes held hers. "But even if you never forgive me, I'll keep doing it." The honesty in his words cracked something open inside her. She realized she'd been holding on to her anchor not just to protect herself, but because she didn't know what to do without it. She looked away, blinking back sudden tears. Later, as the day ended, she walked him to the subway. "I'm not saying everything's okay," she said quietly, "but I see what you're doing, and it matters." Oliver nodded. "That's all I can hope for." They stood there for a long moment as trains rumbled beneath their feet. When Emma finally stepped forward, she didn't offer a promise, only her hand. Oliver took it gently, as if it were something fragile. The city around them was noisy and bright, but inside that small space between them, there was only quiet. The sound of two people beginning, maybe, to build something real from the wreckage.
Emma and Oliver's story shows us that mistakes, even cruel ones, do not define who we are forever. Betrayal can break hearts, but it also creates the opportunity for growth. Oliver could have walked away, laughing at the game he'd set in motion, but instead he chose a different path, one of honesty, reflection, and genuine effort. Love, in its truest form, is not about winning or proving a point, it is about understanding,
patience, and showing the best version of ourselves when it matters most. Emma's journey mirrors that lesson. She felt the sting of betrayal, the rush of anger, and the protective walls we all build when hurt. Yet, she also reminded us that forgiveness is not weakness. It is a conscious choice to recognize change, to measure actions over words, and to allow someone the chance to prove they are worthy of trust again. Through her cautious steps toward Oliver, she found the courage to believe in sincerity once more, showing that vulnerability, when met with genuine effort, can lead to a love far deeper than infatuation. As we leave Oliver and Emma at the cusp of a new beginning, their story encourages us to reflect on our own lives. How many times have we allowed pride, ego, or fear to keep us from truly connecting with someone? How many opportunities for redemption or for showing kindness do we overlook? In the end, the story reminds us that it is never too late to make amends, to rebuild trust, and to open our hearts to love that is real, earned, and lasting. The road may be messy, painful, and uncertain, but the reward, authentic connection, is always worth the journey.
Thank you so much for watching Oliver and Emma's story. We hope it reminded you that even when trust is broken, growth and love are possible if both hearts are willing to change. Stories like this aren't just entertainment, they're lessons we can carry into our own lives, showing us the power of honesty, patience, and courage in relationships. If this story moved you, or if you've ever experienced something similar, please leave a comment below. We'd love to hear where you're watching from and your thoughts on how Oliver and Emma's journey resonated with you. Don't forget to hit that like button if you enjoyed the video, and make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more emotional stories full of lessons about love, trust, and second chances. Your support helps us keep creating stories that touch the heart and inspire reflection. Until next time, remember, sometimes the hardest battles lead to the most meaningful victories, and every heart has the power to change.